right, let's get started. Hello, good evening. Welcome to PMP Live. My name is Margaret, and I'm the events coordinator for the Children and Teens Department at Politics and Prose. Thank you for joining us and tuning into this virtual format where we continue to bring authors and new books to you. I have the pleasure of hosting our event this evening, and I'm delighted to welcome our authors, Leslie C. Youngblood and Jewell Parker Rhodes, as well as moderator Takia C. Graham, to celebrate the publication of Leslie's newest book, Forever This Summer. And let me just show you the gorgeous cover again. Just a few housekeeping points before we get started. You can click the link we will drop in the chat to get your own copy of Forever This Summer and other books by our authors. We do have signed book plates as well, and bookmarks are available with the purchase of Forever This Summer while the supplies last. Tonight, if you have a question for our guests, you can click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and add one there. At the end of the chat, our guests will have time to answer some of your questions. You can also upvote the questions you like and want answered. Now on to introductions. Leslie C. Youngblood received an MFA from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. A former assistant professor of creative writing at Lincoln University, she has lectured at Mississippi State University, UNC Greensboro, and the University of Ghana. She's been awarded a host of writing honors, including a 2014 Yaddos Elizabeth Ames Residency, the Lorien Hemingway Short Story Prize, a Hurston Wright Fellowship, and the Room of Her Own Foundation's 2009 Orlando Short Story Prize. In 2010, she won the Go On Girl Book Club Aspiring Writer Award. Born in Bogalusa, Louisiana, and raised in Rochester, New York, she's fortunate to have a family of natural storytellers and a circle of supportive friends and family. Yay. Love Like Sky was her first novel. Jewell Parker Rhodes is the author of Ninth Ward, a winner of a Coretta Scott King Honor, Sugar, winner of the Jane Addams Children's Book Award, and the New York Times bestselling Ghost Boys, as well as Bayou Magic, Towers Falling, Black Brother, and she has the forthcoming Paradise on Fire coming this fall. She has written many award-winning novels for adults, including Magic City, which a novel about the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, which was recently reissued. Jewell is the Virginia G. Piper Endowed Chair of Creative Writing at Arizona State University, and the driving force behind all of her work is to inspire social justice, equality, and environmental stewardship. Takia C. Graham will moderate. Takia has helped get 900 plus copies of Leslie's first book, Love Like Sky, out in the community. She is a Black literature and English professor at Monroe College and a diversity and inclusion specialist. And now it's my pleasure to turn the event over to the three of them. Take it away.
Good evening, beautiful people. I'm so excited to be your moderator for today's conversation with my dear friend Leslie and the illustrious Dr. Jewell, who says just call her Jewell. So I'm gonna get up, and get beyond my grandmother's teaching. So I just want to share something that Leslie put on TikTok last night, and I hope it doesn't make her cry. 20 years ago, Dr. Jewell, you signed Leslie's copy of Free Within Ourselves, Fiction Lessons for Black Authors. You wrote, "Get to it. My spirit walks with yours. Best wishes and congratulations. Keep on growing strong." And so tonight is a full circle moment. So as we begin, right? I thought that you all might speak to each other. And Leslie, you can just tell her what that meant for you 20 years ago and to be in this space tonight. And then Jewell, for you to hear your words come back in this space. How was that for you all?
I would love that.
Well, let me just clarify. I purchased Free Within Ourselves. I was, starting my journey, just trying to find my place in writing. And that was, I think that's your afterword in the book, Takia. This is our second time meeting and only virtually. So that is what she wrote and as the afterword in her book, but it just touched me And I've kept that book for 20 years. I think it published in 1999, and I got it right around 2000. And it has meant so much to me. And I shared it. I just shared the fact that I still had it. I had notes because there's a lot of, wonderful information. And I did read that afterward or parting thoughts that you wrote to all of us, aspiring authors and writers, just that ability to claim that you are a writer. You gave me that early to say you are a writer. Now, I was aspiring to be an author, of course, but you let me know in that book that I was a writer.
Oh, I'm so happy, Leslie, and thank you. That means a great deal to me. Actually, I had the journey of not knowing that Black women wrote books until I was a junior in college. And when I discovered it, I switched my major to English and started my writer's journey. Even though I had written all the time, I didn't think that I, as a Black woman, could raise my voice. And certainly everything that was published, it seemed, and that I was given to read were, books about, the white community written by white authors. So I really wanted to use a book that used African-American examples to provide a supportive home for, young writers to see the trailblazers.
Yes.
See Toni Morrison, Terry McMillan,
Right.
Phoebe
Here
Morgan
it is.
Campbell, yes. So actually, it's fiction lessons, and lessons
Right.
are for everyone, if you want to learn how to write. But the examples draw from the African-American heritage. And the entire time that I went to college and studied writing, I was never given a singular example of any person who was diverse writing, their culture, their history. And in fact, I endured many classes where they'd say, "Why didn't you tell me your characters were Black?" And I'd go, "Why didn't you tell me your characters were white?" just the idea of having, again, like mirrors and windows and reading, having, that mirror as you're learning how to write, to see how other people from your community have done it. So yes, let's get it. I'm glad that worked. Yes.
Thank you.
And you were so accomplished, Leslie. I have read your latest novel 3 times now. Once I read it because my publisher said, "Oh, think about giving a blurb for this book," which I did, saying it was a glorious, big-hearted, and joyful novel, which it is.
Yes.
And then I had a graduate student. I know, she had a graduate student select this book, and we worked on your book all this semester in helping her write her thesis. And then I just finished reading it again today, and it just gets better and better on reading and rereading it. And you were so accomplished. You really have achieved something so much to be proud of. And in particular, just the Black girl joy, and seeing the image of the 3 best Black girlfriends, and what a statement that is for not just children of color, but all children. So bravo, Leslie.
I think it's so absolutely fantastic that each of you in your words and publications are able to have this dialogue with each other. And that's what we hope that the best stories do. Like we plant seeds. 20 years ago, a seed was planted, but someone poured into you, and seeing that representation of these highly melanated girls on your book cover. Leslie, now we know that that is something that you, I don't want to say fought for, but it was something that was really important to you. And when we look at both of your bodies of work, what is that representation on the cover showing Black youth and Black children, Black girls in natural hair? Why is that so important?
That was extremely important to me because it represented the book. I mean, when I first signed with Disney, people were warning me not to sign because they would misconstrue the girls, they would lighten their hair. Well, that necessarily did not happen, but the original cover that Vashti had for Love Light Sky was not the one that we ended up going with. So I had an amazing editor at that time, Laura Shriver, and I said, "Laura, this cover is nice, but it just doesn't grab me. There was a big heart, and the image, then Georgie was very small underneath the heart. So the focus by marketing at that time was that that would be, quote unquote, make it more marketable, more generic, so it wouldn't be deemed a quote unquote Black book. But I was like, I just said it just, I don't think it's the cover. So she went to bat for me, and she sent me every single piece of Vashti's artwork. And when she sent in her, everything she had submitted to marketing, I saw that representation of Georgie, and I was like, this is it. And that's how she came to be the dominant sole figure. Her skin was darker than on the original. I added her little earrings, and added her little Band-Aid on her knee. It was Georgie. And I thank Vashti for all of her work on this project.
And in case some don't know, she's talking about the great New York Times bestselling writer and illustrator, Vashti Harrison.
Several times over with Little Leaders. She has done that, and and I've had the pleasure of meeting her once as well. Just such a talented person. And I was very fortunate to have her illustrate both books.
Yes, that's absolutely stunning and beautiful. But I wanted to know, why did you do two books? You can read either novel, Love Like Sky or Forever this summer.
Forever this summer.
Just wanted to check I didn't say it wrong. Sometimes, students or kids will ask me, well, why don't you do a sequel or a prequel or this? And it seems to me that you've done something even better. It's like you've done two standalone novels that sort of talk across the locales and the friends to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Did you choose to do that from the get-go, or did it just happen naturally?
Well, when my original deal with Disney was a 2-book deal. So there was, 2 books in the works, but the second one could be any, book at all. But once I got to the characters, once I was in that family with Peaches, with Georgie, with the grandmother, only thing I could think about was I would love to see them in Bogalusa, Louisiana. So actually the characters and the blended family and Peaches and the sibling relationship is the impetus for Love Like Sky. But the setting, and to put those characters in the setting of my actual real life hometown, Bogalusa, Louisiana, was the driving force for Forever This Summer. And I'm also fortunate to have a great editor now, my editor Liz, and she was saying, let's not try to make it quote unquote such a sequel, but a standalone, a sister book. So it has a separate storyline, even though these characters are familiar, you can read one without the other. But I want you to read both, everyone out there.
Absolutely.
So when we look at Forever This Summer, like you said, you have these 2 books that can't operate as a standalone, and they're in conversation, but we have a thread. We have G Baby, we have Georgie, we have her being this young woman who grows a lot from the end of Love Like Sky to a few short weeks later, we have her seeming a lot older. So one of the things with middle grades books, people might think that some of the topics that you selected, you're talking about foster care and limb difference and, an absentee mother. Why did you choose to tackle what people consider adult topics, but keep it for young readers?
Well, I thought also in Love Like Sky, I tackled adult topics as well. Keep in mind, children are privy to adult topics. It's just that sometimes adults do not discuss those topics with children. So as a person, as I've talked about with Dr. Jewell before, or I'm trying to say Jewell, we were privy to those conversations at the kitchen table, on the porch. You would hear these grown-up things, but there would be no one to decipher, to work them out with you. And I think that that is always in the back of my mind. Children, like even with dealing with Alzheimer's in Forever This Summer. Now, those are the grandparents of children. And is someone talking to them about this disease? Is someone telling them why grandmother cannot remember their name? So children are privy to adult conversations. These books are an entryway for teachers and other adults to have these conversations. And that's important to me.
It's like your book makes a safe space for
Right.
parents and teachers to begin the discussion. I also am with you, Leslie, that we shouldn't patronize our youth,
Mhm.
because yes, they hear, see, and know so much more than some people will give them credit for. But also by opening up the discussion space, you also open up the space for Georgie in particular to become empowered. So that
Mhm.
one of the things that your character has, all the characters, but especially G-Girl Georgie, is
Mhm.
agency.
Right.
That she brings her own special qualities and strength to moving forward and making things better for the whole family, despite the tragedy of Alzheimer's. I love that, and kids need to see that.
They need to, and I think that even with Love Like Sky, and I'll just tell you something from my childhood. My sister was gravely ill when we were younger, and everyone was rightfully so, going to the hospital to visit her, and I would hear conversations of how she may not make it, frightened, petrified. And I think to this day, it just shakes me that I didn't have anyone to talk to about it, and so even in Love Like Sky, there is, as you said, that entryway for parents to discuss and say, hey, make sure that you're including children in these adult topics and the adult discussions.
I think that what you both pointed out too is that these are not just adult topics. If they're happening in proximity and around the children, these are also children's issues, right?
Exactly.
And so one of the things that can also happen is that children can talk to each other. You talk about agency, Dr. Jewell, and being
Right.
able to have these conversations. And so what you've given young children, Leslie, is a way for them, like a playbook almost, for them
Right.
to be, go through things or maybe have a struggle. My favorite in this book is Markie, and really having this character who's going through something that seems so unfathomable. I don't want to give too much away. We want people to buy the book, but I do want you to talk about Markie a little bit. Like when you created this dynamic, protagonist and this parallel, a foil, if you were, for Georgie's character, you have Markie, who is like tough and cocky but loving, and like, how did you create a balance of a young Black character and let her be her full self in this story where she could stand up to a strong character like Georgie?
I absolutely love Markie as well, and I have to say, one of my mentors, Marita Golden, she told me years ago, kids are always smarter than we give them credit for. And I remember that through every single thing I write. And when I think about Markie, as you said, she is sort of a foil to Georgie, but I wanted a character who's in Bogalusa, who really knows how to maneuver, and who also understands that she has agency as well. She wants, I don't want to give it away, but I think what I wanted to do with her, Takia, to go back to that process, was just, I know there's girls out there like that. I know there's a lot of girls who, have that strength and they can see themselves in Markie. And that's what it all boils down to, writing characters that I know are out there in the world and they can look at it and say, yes, that's me. That's how I am. Or that's my best friend. I relate to her a little bit more now that I understand Markie and things that are going on with her that I can't see that, happened off the page. So that's just important to me. Every girl can find their self within these characters. And Markie is really, just a compilation of so many girls that I personally know.
Bravo, Leslie, too, because your characters are all so multidimensional. Even characters that have smaller parts, they're not at all a superficial take. There's just depth that I want to go and live with this family. Can I belong? All the interconnections and calling, the divorced dad on the telephone. But in particular, Markie, because some people will say she's strong, as though that's the only thing that defines her, almost kind of like the stereotype of strong Black women, But no, Markie is not just that. She is layers and layers and layers. And what I love is how in the novel, not only do you expose Georgie's layers, but you take Markie as the foil, as Shakika said, and you expose what I think is more and more vulnerability.
Right.
And more inclusiveness. And it was just a miracle to be a part of that, of to seeing girls that were not just one thing, but they were the whole, as we all are, this human complicated wondrous whole that reveals itself, which happens among best friends.
It
which
does.
It happens, yeah. They
right. Say, for instance, with Markie and Georgie, the things that Georgie may take for granted are the things that Markie just was never exposed to. And so that is how it works with these best friend dynamics. One best friend may be in a blended family, the other may be with a single mom. So they all say, if I was in your shoes, and Markie really lets Georgie know that some things that you have, I wish I had, but Georgie wants Markie's independence. So when they get together, that is Black girl magic for me, and I love it.
And speaking of Black girl magic, it's funny, I have all these questions that are prepared. I'm not even like, this is what you talk about, having this really organic conversation. And I'm thinking about the characters in this multi-generational experience.
Yes.
And thinking about people having agency and working things out. There's a lot of levels to sisterhood. We have the biological sisterhood,
right?
We have fictive kinship. We have, the community sisters. And so when you think about the representations of Black women and girls in that those multidimensional experiences, why was that important for you to show, as Dr. Jewell said, that layering and not just have the characters be one thing? Like the mother is not just one thing. We see her vulnerability. We see her feeling guilt and shame, and we see her, her fear. So even when we look at the adult characters, why was it important for you to create that layering?
These questions, I tell you, Taki, and I don't want to be like this pie in the sky writer, but these are so difficult to answer because when I write, I'm just writing people. I'm writing real people. And I know multifaceted, multidimensional people. And so that is just what I bring to the characters. It just wouldn't dawn on me to just write a flat one-dimensional character, because I don't know one, not up close and personal. Every person that I know, and that when you really get to know someone and they're honest and they share their vulnerabilities with you, they share their secrets, their hopes, their dreams, that person is the kind of people I bring to both of these novels. And that's why it just doesn't dawn on me not to make, if anything, it's taking characters out, like I have too many characters, too much going on with each character, too many layers. But when I'm writing, when I'm in that story and I'm connected to these characters and they start to speak, that is where this comes from. So it's just hard to decipher it. I just think when I'm writing that they're real people with real secrets, and it's just my job as the vessel to get it on the page and then work it out with them.
But that's all part of the glory of you as a human being, as a writer, because you're really talking about empathy in its like most widest sense, that you connect with people. And I also know that you read lots of books or lots of stories that also connect it with empathy. So as a writer, you've decided I'm writing character-driven stories that being in their shoes or uncovering the possibilities of their character. So it's not just all about the plot. It's not about the fireworks and the splash. It's about human
The
beings
characters.
making those interpersonal connections.
Right.
Bravo.
Thank you.
But also recognizing too, Leslie, I mean, we don't want to be dismissive of craft, and this is not a writing workshop, but we have to say that you are flexing a writer muscle there. Everybody cannot just chronicle people's lives. And so you said something that was really important. I want to pause in that moment. You said you surrender, like you move yourself out of it, you become a vessel. And so that shows that you have a respect, even though they're quote unquote fiction, this is somebody's real life. Like I know for me, you know, reading the books, I want to tell y'all a quick something. Leslie had a chance to sit down. I did a book club rather, for Love Like Sky. And there were probably 15 little Black girls who were 8 to 10 years old. And when I tell you that probably had been the toughest audience, and Leslie can speak to, those little girls were asking questions. They have notebooks out. They were like, excuse me, you wrote this. And they really embody the language of G Baby and her peers. So when we think about, like, you're like, oh, I don't know any flat people, not knowing a flat person and being able to translate that where we can see ourselves and read something 3 times, like you have to on your book birthday, like celebrate yourself. And we don't always do that. And so I want,
Yes. All props to you, Leslie. All props.
And I have a question for you, Dr. Jewell, as a friend of hers, right? So I see Leslie in this process, and I want anybody who's watching this to really hear me ask this question. What advice can you give Leslie so that she can enjoy this process in a different sort of way?
Are you asking me?
Yes, I am. I would like for you to sit her down at your feet and give her something that she can use. I mean, she has that 20-year-old dog-eared copy of that book that she holds on to. We love it. But if you can just pour something into the vessel that she is, because she's given us so much as you have. But Leslie, you know, this is a business too. So as much as we're like, oh, you're writing this book and it's a labor of love, it is labor still. So if there's anything you can say to her as someone who's had this extensive career so far, that's keep going. But like, what are some things that she can do to just enjoy the process in a different sort of freeing way for her? Not that she's not enjoying it at all.
No, that she's, yes, of course she's enjoying it. You're enjoying it. But actually, Leslie, I am so happy and proud and honored to know you, because I think the idea of writing the nuances of character and of our culture, you know, are just so wonderful and so needed. And I think that perseverance that you had, you know, in publishing, of keeping going, you know, going on and writing what you love rather than what, you know, people think you ought to be writing about, you know, and writing and asking for representation of the Black girls that you were speaking to, you know, and not having that all sort of like sidetracked or sideways, you know. So that for me, I would just simply say, keep on doing you. You know, one of the things that is so true is that publishing has always been tricky. It's always hard, and it's like an up and down roller coaster. And the thing that keeps me happy is what I imagine will keep you happy too. One, you're doing it because you love it.
I love it.
Keep doing what you're doing. So keep doing what you're doing, and everything else is gravy. And you now know that if the world is silly enough at one time to say, well, we don't know about this, or we want to pass this.
Hundreds of times.
They're the one with the problem, though. But which because younger writers, before they've made their debuts and have succeeded in doing that frightening second novel that you have done so brilliantly well, they actually think it's all on them. So no, you are doing what's needed to be done, you know, and you are going to persevere, and the world has to let you in. But if they don't, all those wonderful, or if they pause or take a break, all those wonderful voices and characters, and you loving what you do and doing it because you were meant to do it, you have already succeeded in being, a triumph. Do you know how rare that is, Leslie?
It's rare.
Don't let anybody pick your joy. They'll try, but it's like, you know, just tell them, go away.
I have to tell, you know, speaking of character-driven stories, I have to tell, you know, really quickly, just how I changed everything, even before I purchased Free Within Ourselves, your manual. I was a receptionist. This is my Baldwin story, and I told it before. I was a receptionist, and had a marketing major way back when, and going to night school, doing this, doing that. And I loved books, I loved writing, but like you said, it had never dawned on me that this could be a career. Internet wasn't what it is now, and none of that stuff. I was a receptionist in Atlanta, Georgia. A secretary named Nettie, I'll never forget her. She said, "Oh, here's a book you might like." And it was James Baldwin's Go Tell It on the Mountain. So speaking of how I came about character-driven stories,
Yes.
for the rest of my shift, I read that book. And the next day, I changed my major from marketing to English with a concentration in creative writing. And I've been trying to make it work since then. I tell you, it's amazing. I don't know, I'm sure I would have come about it eventually, but the fact that this book that I still have, and this Nettie just said here, and I've lost touch with her, but she and that book changed the entire trajectory of my life.
Yes.
And I've never looked back. And then finding what out there could feed me. And that's where the manual, Free Within Ourselves comes in, fiction, lessons for fiction, Black fiction writers, all of that. And then Marita Golden and Hurston Wright, over and over. I have hundreds of rejections. So as we celebrate, Forever this summer, and as I talk about this 20-year process, somebody out there needs to hear it, to hold on and to not stop.
Yes, absolutely, Leslie. And you said it so well. You have both a career and a calling. The career is what the world will do with you. And finally, it's like we're celebrating you, and you're going to have a wonderful career, but you have already won, and that you have recognized your calling.
Right.
And it's something that will go and be with you until the very last breath. And how grateful I am that you found it. I found it. We're sisters together in that. So just bravo, girl. Just bravo.
Thank you.
I know we have all grown an inch from that. I'm so taller. Like, okay, that is absolutely, Leslie. I hope that's food for your soul. I hope it is absolutely food for your soul.
And Nettie, wherever you are.
Oh, we're gonna find Nettie. We're gonna find Nettie. So that's gonna be our next project. No.
Finding. Oh, that would be wonderful.
That's right. Finding Nettie. Like, forget Nemo. We're gonna find Nettie.
But it also speaks to the power of how one person can make a difference. And
right.
there is a privilege that Leslie has as an author, because her book, now that it is out in the world, will echo across so many other people, so many young kids, all of them making points of difference. And it's the same with teaching that we've all done together, and Takia, that you do. And so it's sort of like to recognize that power of why we talk about people, because people are glorious.
They are.
It'll never leave, right? It'll never leave. You always will have these books in this space. There is a question in the Q&A, so it's posed to both of you. It says, Leslie and Jewell, this is by Sam O. Both of you have written books where historical events are included in your stories. Can you talk about that choice? And how did you decide which events to write about?
Leslie, you want to go?
I know there are certain things that stick out to me and that are memorable from Bogalusa, like the Deacons for Defense and Justice, where they are important in history, not as well known. The Deacons for Defense and Justice stood up to the Klan in Bogalusa. So when I talk about them in the story, it's just my way of paying reverence. And say, for instance, in Forever and Love Like Sky, the name, say, if I say Trayvon Martin, it's a way that I know that I've made that name permanent in this book. And there will be a little kid that may say, who is this? What happened to him? And that teacher, that's their moment to say, let me tell you about. So I decide, and that's just briefly how I decide what to include. Things that I know that I don't want forgotten, and I know that I've done my part, as small as it may be, to put it in a book so someone else can say, hey, if they don't know, now they know, and someone else can expound on that.
Wow, that's so cool. When I started writing, I was writing for the history that I didn't get in school. I'm in first generation college, and my grandparents who raised me, and then later I was with various parents, complicated story. They were very busy working, and didn't have time to, sit and talk or to talk about, going to school. Just that didn't happen in my family until me. So a lot of what I had learned wasn't about my culture in terms of the classroom. And so when I started writing, I would find out about, say, Marie Laveau. And I'd go, well, who is this Black woman who's supposedly the most famous Black woman in New Orleans at a time when most Black women were slaves, or mistresses? Who was she? And then I'd go off on 7 years of search for that. Or I'd be reading the Sunday paper, and that's how I found out in 1991 about the Tulsa Race Massacre. And it was like, what? What is this history? And I went and searched for that, and then I wrote the book, which was way ahead of its time, and now it's coming.
Right.
One day I was listening to a PBS video where Frederick Douglass supposedly said to his daughter not to marry this ex-slave man because she shouldn't be like him, married to an old Black log. And it's like, what are you talking about? And so mainly I'm going off in search of things I didn't know. But now that I'm writing for youth, I've gotten much more personal about it. So for Ghost Boys, I was a little girl when I saw Emmett Till's body, and that traumatized me for my entire life. It just still stays with my soul. And I think trying to sort of contrast and why the historical connections between Emmett Till and Amir Rice or Trayvon Martin or Laquan McDonald, and trying to understand that was what drove Ghost Boys. But in writing that book, I started going more into my personal history. So Black Brother is actually more the most personal of my stories about me trying to raise my kids in a time where colorism was affecting their lives in very, very different ways. But originally, I knew very little. So to me, I remember my kids, they were growing up, and in 5th grade, they all read the same Black book, Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, which if you're only going to read one, which you shouldn't just read one, that is a mammoth, marvelous one to read. But that was all that they were ever given. So to me, I swore I want to have my books used in a classroom one day. I want my books to go out and shine and sing. But you cannot imagine that when I was growing up, the world was so, so different. We have made change in terms of getting more diversity and inclusion, and we need to make even more and more and more, so that we don't have kids growing up and saying, what is this history? What is this community that I don't know? And you're carrying it forward, Leslie.
Right. And unfortunately, I was not privy to Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry.
Oh my gosh.
I think, it was Catcher in the Rye, To Kill a Mockingbird, and that was The Collector, John Fowles, but it was all of those I know, but I did not.
Yes.
No Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry until much later. So now that it's really about these books that we have now, these books that we write. Teachers have to, I'm not going to speak to teachers, but we know that some people love their quote unquote canon and they're not open to adding additional books into that, but they have to. Kids have to be exposed to other books earlier because perhaps even the ideal of writing could have come along earlier for a lot of us. Because Virginia Hamilton was out there at that time. I just was not exposed to her.
Yes.
So, so many other books that I've learned later. Daddy Was a Number Runner. I mean, all of those books are out there.
Yes. I do. And actually the books, Virginia Hamilton, that was my kids. 3.5 years apart, and they both had the one book in 5th grade. So in my childhood, I had no books by persons of color, and my kids both had one. So one of the things you can be sure of is that my granddaughter is going to grow up in a completely different world, thanks to authors like you, Leslie, and
like you.
And like you.
Yeah, moving along with diversity. But we also have to give a shout out, I think, for me is to Walter D. Myers too.
Yes, definitely.
That when he came along and then my daughter started reading him, it was just like a revelation, and to me, he is one of our canon writers,
Right.
He really is. And I would put, Forever This Summer, right up there with all the sort of like classics of, friendships and the meaning and value of friendships, so that should be a classic and be part of the canon as well too.
Thank you. We have 2 questions in the Q&A. We have about 5 minutes, Leslie. So the first question is that were there any surprises when you continued the story of Georgie and her family, and what was easy or difficult in expanding their stories? And remember, we have one more question to get to after that. So.
Well, I think there's definitely surprises. Watching Georgie develop, watching Georgie as she moved outside of her comfort zone, which is normally her best friend Nikki and Peaches. So watching Georgie and giving and empowering other kids to move out of their comfort zone, to explore, meet new people, and take chances. So I think those were pretty much Georgie out of her comfort zone was really the biggest surprise, how she connected to that.
How she grew up so fast, right?
Right.
I love this idea of these 2 standalone books who are in conversation, so that works, right?
Because what happens is that an event can happen in life, and I think in Georgie at the end of Love Like Sky, what she experiences kind of gives her a new perspective, which propels her into Forever This Summer, that mindset.
Oh.
Okay. And then the last question that we have, and I have one more question for the both of you. So is there a reason why you decide to set both books in the summertime?
Oh.
One, I love the summertime. I love the summertime. I think kids can be more active. I get them outdoors, and it really wasn't intentional. Having been, spent a lot of time in Atlanta, Georgia, it just came natural. So it just came natural to me to set them in the summertime. So, but that's a good point. It wasn't intentional. And keep in mind, one takes place and it's just a couple of weeks after that we have that. So it is during that same season, really.
Tokia, can I ask a question for Leslie?
Please.
Leslie, are you working on your next book?
You know what? I need to give myself the advice to continue to work on the next book. And I am, but I haven't been doing it as much. I've been so fixated on Forever This Summer. I know that I'm supposed to give this over to the world now. I've done what I can do and not fixated on it. And it's hard though, but I am working on another project, not under contract yet though, but I'm working on one. Yeah. From a male perspective, a 12-year-old boy's point of view, which I haven't written as the main protagonist before, but I love my male characters. I love Kevin Jenkins in Love Like Sky. I love Scooter and Forever This Summer. I love writing male characters. So I would like to tackle a novel as the male character as the protagonist.
Well, that sounds wonderful. You're stretching and growing.
Yes.
And I got to tell you too, when I have a book launch, it's about 6 months. I don't do anything either. I mean, you help like launch the baby. You learn how to swaddle it and give it into the world. So I should ask that question. That wasn't fair. But I count working time also just thinking time, not necessarily writing time. So I think what are you thinking about doing next, but you got to give your baby that sort of launch out into the world, get them ready for their like prom date or their whatever, however you want to talk about mitzvah, whatever you want to say.
Right.
I did want to say though that I do think, just like there is such a magic to your characters and your girls and how they move across time, move across summers. And I do not like sequels at all, but it's like your characters are the only ones that I want to see them again. I cannot wait to see, Markie and Georgie back home in Atlanta. That I see
Yes.
where Markie she's more of the main character, but it's sort of like, if Faulkner can create a whole world and just keep exploring that world, you've created a whole world of this wondrous multi-generational family. So if you go on with that too, I will be right in line to buy that book.
I actually thought about writing from Markie's point of view, but I've just kind of stopped, and I was doing, this separate book totally out of that world.
Keep
But
writing those.
I think
Keep
I
writing.
think there's a story there. I think Markie.
I've been trying to get her to do this, so I'm glad that someone else has said this to her.
Mentioned it. Oh,
I have fallen in love with Markie, and I think that that's a wonderful place to stop, with Leslie having marching orders to create, to make, to create, to make, to create, and to make. Dr. Jewell, you truly are. Leslie C. Youngblood, we are so excited to usher in your book, baby. My name is Takia C. Graham, and I'm so honored to have this conversation with these two esteemed writers. I'm going to turn it back over to Margaret of Politics and Prose.
Yeah, thank you, the three of you. I would love to listen to you all three this all evening long. Wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, Takia, for moderating it, and to Leslie and Jewell for joining us and talking about forever the summer and writing and all sorts of wonderful things. For the viewers, thank you for your questions, and thanks. Don't forget, you can click on the link in the chat to get your copy of Forever the Summer and other books by the authors. We do have the signed book plates and the nice bookmarks for Leslie's books. So thanks again to everyone for joining us, and just keep reading and expanding your worlds. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
good night. Bravo, Leslie.
Thank you, Jude. Thank you, Takia. Thank you.